Thank you, Flavia. And now we step by to another way of embodiment, which is about embodying the observer, exploring contemporary visual representations of the post-human body with Nóra Szabó. She's a Hungarian artist, and she's pursuing her PhD at the Hungarian University of Fine Arts in Budapest, focusing on the representation of the human body, as I just mentioned, through combining traditional techniques like plaster casting with digital media such as 3D printing. Her art reflects the hybrid nature of our contemporary existence, where artificial technology and organic elements intertwine. Through her thought-provoking compositions, Szabó challenges conventional notions of human representation and invites viewers to contemplate the evolving relationship between humanity and technology. We welcome Nóra, and she will tell us more about this aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. So the next half hour I'm going to talk about my research, and I will also talk shortly about the HUFA Research Lab Block seminar, which was organized during the spring, and about which you can hear more from the organizers during a public talk starting tomorrow at 5 p.m. So, and also I would like to take this opportunity in the beginning of the lecture to thank my supervisor, Ágnes Előd, for her help, and also I would like to thank Budapest Gallery, but especially KAI residency team, who supported me in my research in Košice, Slovakia, over the last 3 months. So, next slide, please. Yeah. So, for me, the seminar organized by HUFA Research Lab was an important experience, as the exercise created a discursive environment in which communication between artist researchers with diverse backgrounds and various research goals became possible. I would like to talk briefly about one of the activities of the seminar. On the first morning of the first day, we were greeted by a surprise, a live image of 2 models standing on a podium. It was a narrative setting in the sense that their posture and their clothing suggested a story between them. They were wearing white lab coat, one was sitting and the other one standing. Although they had no object in their hands, their posture suggested that they were observing something. This setup created a very intriguing situation, and the suggestion of the story between the characters encouraged us to play a detective game. The task was to observe the scene in such detail that we could later draw it from memory in as much detail as possible. During the observation, we moved around, and at the same time, we became aware of each other's movements. We watched how the other moved around the space, how he changed his position, from where and how he looked at the scene. Then we didn't have to draw actually the setting after all, but the exercise took a new form on the 3rd day. So in this task, we formed groups of 2, and the first person task was to observe a detail of their choice in the room for 5 minutes with the same exclusive attention that we had previously used to observe the live image. While the first person was doing this observation, the second person had to observe the first person, and this was very exciting. Actually, it made me very tense. I couldn't fully relax and focus because when my full attention dedicated to the observation of an object, I felt it's an intimate moment. So I felt very uncomfortable being observed while observing. And I thought it was giving another person insight into a process that was too intimate. Hence I felt really vulnerable. So it was the exercise that, this exercise involved us in a playful way, then created a strong emotional situation, and finally it raised a wide range of questions. So during the wrap-up discussion, we shared the experiences of the exercise and talked about the historical background and current context in art education of drawing models naked while learning anatomy, how strange it would be in a difficult setting. Then we discussed how our concept of observation as a scientific method originates in the 16th century natural sciences, the method of observing the object in its own environment without interference. We then shared our experiences of how we could or could not detach ourselves from the other person's gaze, through which we experienced firsthand that the observation inevitably affects the object of it. Many scientific examples were given. Finally, there was a discussion about the imperative of self-definition of for the observer, in our case, the person conducting artistic research. It touched upon the theory that since the era of conceptualism, we have felt compelled to delineate the starting position and context of individual engaged in artistic practice. So on the one hand, this experience broadened my perspective on what is historically constructed in artistic research. On the other hand, I realized that this kind of examination of the nature of the observer is crucial in defining the concept of artistic research, because it is about the position of artistic research in relation to the scientific community, and it is about the disclosure of artistic practice to the public, and through this is about the relationship between the research and the artistic research and society. These dialogues have been particularly intriguing to me, as seeking diverse perspectives is integral to my artistic practice. Furthermore, I think that it is crucial to explore the historical underpinnings of the observer's position if we aim to define why we think the way we do, to elucidate the reasoning behind our thought processes. In this regard, I would like to share how I construct different observer positions in my artworks and how I seek different perspectives in my own artistic practice. So, my current research is primarily centered on the method of imprinting, which I began in 2014, often using my own body as a model. By presenting the body in this way, my intention is not to represent an individual body, but rather to an attempt to define the universal human being. I address the concept of time within the image as factor causing essential changes in the object, through which I explore the particularities of our perception. As a side note, this is a sculpture of mine from like 7 years ago, and it's it's made from gelatin and a graphite powder, just referring back to Carl's presentation earlier in the morning. So the body, though in our possession, it undergoes a constant transformation. We never remain the same, and yet we cannot change from one moment to the next. Our physical presence in life changes, and our inner character changes with our outward appearance. The object of study is the body, but it is futile to identify the person who it represents. For even if it is recognizable now, it may not be later. Ultimately, all that matters is that it is a body. It's an image of humanity, a concept of a being, a human being. The painter paints his hand and presses it on a piece of paper, but every detail is important. What he wears, what he says, how he feels and thinks. However, as soon as the hand is lifted from the paper, the individual dissolves, vanishes into thin air, and the image of the imprint remains. The Human Pattern Project is about the possibilities of representing the human body in relation to posthuman theories. Its aim to interpret the changing identity of the human with a strong emphasis on the relationship between the organic and the artificial, and the critical examination of the impact of technological developments on art. Recent global changes have profoundly reshaped our perception of humanity. Our relationship with the environment is being redefined. Our relationship to emerging technologies with the contemporary scientific and technological advances, both present and past, the possibility of human-machine hybrid has become a reality. Posthuman theories describe a radical transformation of human identity. The central theme of the Human Pattern Project is how these are changing our conceptions of the human body. So my hypothesis is that the natural body evolves to a new level by the use of artificial materials like implants, artificial intelligence methods, robotic systems, and through this process the concept of the body is changing. The concept of the human being of our time becomes a heterogeneous composition that is represented in the visual arts by the combined use of analog and digital media. For this reason, my research employs a mixed media approach, combining traditional sculptural techniques with digital methods. Next slide, The narrative of the human pattern takes place in an imaginary future. In this future state, the human pattern can be a tutorial for the creation of a different but human-like form of existence, thus symbolizing the possibility of continuation, the survival of the human form but in altered circumstances. On the other hand, it is a dystopian vision, the possibility of a world without humans, where the human pattern preserves the human type as a time capsule, as an outdated memory of the past. Guided by the posthuman theories, I address the possibility of human, posthuman and non-human words, as I'm interested in the properties of communication and visual expression. I believe that this exploration brings us closer to understanding the concept of the human in our time. The human pattern portal relief is in the shape of a gate. The chosen form indicates that this work is both the overture and the summary of the human pattern project. The human pattern is a structural drawing that depicts the surface of the body, the skin, in an unfolded format cut into parts. In the aesthetic shaping of the pattern, the emphasis is on the anatomical representation of the human body using rigid robotic mechanical structural lines. The Janus coin, the title of this work is The Coin of Janus. The sculpture was created for an exhibition that featured works in both virtual reality and traditional exhibition space. On the head part of the coin, there are two human profiles, which recall the depiction of Janus. Janus, who has two faces, one looking into the past and the other into the future, symbolizing that we live in the midst of change. Our past cannot continue, and the future is frighteningly different. On the text side of the coin, there is a riddle exploring the relationship between humans and artificial intelligence, posed by a sphinx in the virtual space. It sounds like I learn fast, I never forget. My master created me in his own image. Maybe that's why he's afraid of me. Who am I? The human pattern plaque is a homage to pioneer plaques, a 3D printed plaque. The pioneer plaques were the first objects with visual message sent into space aboard the Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 space probes. This work is about the information that a message sent into space can carry, like how it can be encoded and how it is possible to decode a picture of the human body from the perspective of a completely different civilization. This is the Areopolis photo series, shows my sculptures installed at an excavation site in Romania. The excavation deals with to excavate 18th century cemetery, where I place my sculptures as kind of a future artifacts that have been unearthed. And that's when I became really interested in the concept of technofossils. So through these earlier projects, I thought to provide the comprehensive view of the observer positions from which I had been investigating the human condition. And this leads to my current project, which takes place in Karst Cave. So when I was planning my trip to Košice 3 months ago, I was inspired to visit the Baradla cave, which I remember from a trip as a child. The Baradla cave is part of a larger cave system that is on the borders of Slovakia and Hungary. The cave is called Baradla on the Hungarian side and Domice on the Slovak side. These caves are part of a system and can be traversed, but it is only possible for expert cavers due to the difficult access to these parts of the cave. So visiting the Baradla cave, I saw as a secret underground gateway in linking the two countries. The formation of the cave began in the Triassic period, when the region was submerged in seawater. The remains of the animals that lived there at the time and the deposited calcareous sediment they left behind, later as the sea receded and the area rose, solidified into limestone formations within the earth layers. These fossilized remains of prehistoric creatures, such as green algae and sea lilies, can still be observed in the rocks. The total explored length of the cave system exceeds 30 kilometers. As a visitor, you will pass through so-called holes during your tour of the cave. The holes are named after the shapes of the stalactites you can see there. Like in the Baradla cave, it's like the mother tongue, Santa Claus, the hole of columns, just to name a few. There are many theories about how humans identify objects in their environment. One such theory is pattern recognition, which posits that each object we perceive in our environment is stored as a template in long-term memory. During observation, an image of an object is initially stored in short-term memory and then triggers a retrieval process from long-term memory, allowing us to recognize that object based on the retrieved template. A simple example of this process of reading letters, like a letter A written in different ways, is always perceived as letter A, even though it appears distorted. Or like in these pictures, you can see like you retrieve some details, but you can still recognize the symbols. So, of course, there are limits to this distortion, so that the form can be recalled. And beyond a certain point, we can no longer associate it with the template. But I'm actually, what I'm particularly interested in, here's the boundary, where we can recognize a pattern, yet it remains uncertain, but it reminds us of. Like, it's the mixture of a sense of indeterminacy and certainty that the cave forms evoke. The cave is in a perpetual state of transformation. Water infiltrates from the surface into the layers, where it first turns into underground rivers, creating cavities. Then as the large masses of water leaves, water and moisture slowly seep into the cavities to form stalactites. The process is similar to shaping clay. First, a larger piece of material is taken to form the approximate shape by subtraction, and then details are added in places. The form of on the ceiling is stalactite, a columnar mass of minerals that precipitate as water drips, and its counterpart on the ground is stalagmite. When they come together, they form a column that connects the ceiling to the soil. The time it takes for these to form is incomprehensible to humans. It's the time of Earth. The cave was formed long before man appeared, long before man found anything resembling to this place or sought shelter in it. The Baradla Domica cave system was formed 230 million years ago and has been evolving ever since. The cave unleashes energies hidden deep within. The darkness, the swelling, flaring, stacking shapes seems to move. It's a slow motion, slowed down for millions of years. The moisture covers everything. The ochre, the black, the opalescent white drawings. It's a grotesque scene. It's as if we are inside the creature's body, as if our own viscera are surrounding us. The detailed building of stalactites over decades, millimeters by millimeters, over millions of years, transforms the place into a palace. It's a Gothic palace, a galaxy, the shades of minerals, the trickles of shapes, the richness of detail. So during my residency, like last few months, I embarked on sculpting a human body. This body is a sculpture that came to life as an inspiration between the cave's human-like interior environment and the human fossil created by nature. Known as the Grobel man, the bog body is a naturally mummified remnant of a man who lived around 390 BC, a remnant from the Iron Age. The details of his face, his skin, his red hair, his fingerprints are all etched in detail. As Professor Glob described, a handshake from the past. I based the composition of the sculpture of Grobelman's posture. So I selected the details of the head, 2 hands, back, 1 leg, and 2 feet. I wanted to capture the moment in which Grobelman's body was stopped and preserved for us by time in this random movement. I recall from my childhood during a visit to the cave, my first visit to Baradla cave, the guide asked the visitors to choose from one from the 3 passages ahead. And then we choose and pass through. He told us that the story about these passages is that whoever passes through one of the side passages goes to heaven, and whoever passes through the middle, well, not quite. So I didn't encounter this narrative during my recent visit, but leading me to wonder if it had been a dream conjured up by the trip, a figment of my childhood imagination. Nevertheless, such a combination of notions of life and death in the cave is not unusual. The cave has always held an important place in human civilizations, according to the writings of Peter Laučík, who examines the site from an anthropological perspective. Prehistoric man saw the cave as a frontier between the world of the living and the world of the dead. A sanctuary, a liminal space of transitioning from one state to another. During prehistoric rituals, shamans were masked to blend in undetected among the demons and safely perform the ritual that has meant to protect the world of the living. Laučík quotes the famous ethnologist Levi Strauss in his writings, quote, "On the previous basis, we can thus compare the ethnological theory with archaeological artifacts and attempt at building theoretical models of human society. Models that do not correspond to any observable reality, but that may help us distinguish what is original and what is artificial in the present human character, and also get well know a state which no longer exists, which perhaps never existed and probably never will exist, but of which we need to have a correct idea anyway in order to be able to well assess our present state." End of quote. I share this view, and it motivates me to imagine and rebuild in my own present situations that the place, like the cave, has embraced over the millennia. The cave is a place of memories and stories for both the community and the individual. The cave evokes the notion of sublime favored by romanticism, a place where the presence of man dwarfs the power of nature. At the same time, it is the very similarity that makes the cave uncanny for man, because the cave's humid interior reminds us of our own inner being, of the matter from which our bodies are built, and thus of passing and death we would try to shut out from our thoughts. In my sculptures, I use the aesthetic of the forms I saw in the cave. I wanted to convey the erosion of matter, the fragility of the body, the effect of time on matter. The body parts of the sculpture I constructed both evoke the form of the cave and refer to human bones as we see them in a scientific setting, in a laboratory or in an anatomy course. White, clean, object of observation. The sculpture was created using 3D printing. Next. The design places significant emphasis on the combination of analog and digital techniques. I use the body as a base, emphasizing its streamlined organic appearance, and then I aim to mechanize the form. I therefore use the drawing as the basis for the form to evoke the cold, schematic, sharp shapes, evoking an aesthetic with an artificiality. I then subject the form again to an organic molding, and thus transforming the first organic into artificial and then back into organic. In more recent developments, I have explored shape optimization software, which applies parametric modeling to optimize shape by considering the forces acting on the material, resulting in the most efficient shape with minimal material usage. An example is the shape optimization command in Fusion 360 software. In that we can see how the robust shapes left over from the industrial revolution has taken on an organic character. The structures transformed by Fusion 360 software are organic. They resemble the shapes found in the human body or in nature. And I partially use this software to create these 3D models. During my research in Košice, I had the opportunity to consult with Jan Kanuk, head of Geoinformatics department of Pavla Jozefa Šafárika University in Košice. Dr. Kanuk and his team created a 3D surface model of the entire Domica cave using TLS, terrestrial laser scanning method. The laser scanning technology allowed them to convert the entire cave into digital information within millimeter precision, a task nearly impossible with photogrammetry. Laser scanning provided insights into details that would have been otherwise unobservable during cave exploration. In the cave scans, we can observe how the underground water flows underground water flow has carved spaces out of the rocks. In some places, the cave system has an almost familiar river pattern, but in others, you can observe the river breaking and branching into numerous directions where it has encountered a major obstruction and had to change direction. This movement of matter to all corners of the world is reminiscent of the internal structure of the body. There is no up and down in cells. Neurons in the brain build a network. These systems are not two-dimensional. One particularly intriguing observation is that the waterbed in the cave is not situated on the cave floor, as one might expect, but on what we now consider the cave ceiling. The forces of the water flow push the water upwards. The water tried to make its way towards the surface. It carved the rock upwards with greater force, so that we can observe there the indentations that we would normally see in the normal case of water flowing on the surface on the ground. So it was the study of these cave formations and their scientific researches that led to the design of my sculptures of the body. And these studies not only influenced the aesthetics of my work, but also the conceptual depth. As an extension of this project, I plan to work with the cave scans. I envision to insert the human pattern I've created into the cave digitally. The pattern would be placed there in the form of augmented reality. So I would make it available via an internal channel internet network that the drawing could be observed and in the cave structure. In my imagination, the pattern as information would remain in the protected space of the cave, when the rest of the information stored on the internet disappears above the ground, so that the cave preserves the pattern of the human. I draw inspiration for the way I envision the pattern appearing on the cave wall from a text by a Hungarian writer, Imre Bartók, quote, "What if the nature we have left behind, raped but not permanently destroyed, is not freed from its imposed slavery, even if our attempt at civilizational suicide is crowned with success? What then if the poor things remain to have human faces even after the disappearance of man?" End of quote. The information of the human pattern is preserved in the stones, minerals, fossils, and water. And as kind of a precipitation, the drawing of the human pattern spontaneously appears on the cave wall. So as we imagine how we will live many years from now, we are confronted with our current fears. As we observe archaeological finds from the ancient past, we reflect on death and the impermanence of human civilization, on what transcends death. We are amazed at how much the lives of people who lived 10,000 years ago resembles our own. By looking at the history of technology, we can see how we shaped that and how technology has shaped us humans. We are going through a lot of crises in our time, but I hope that perhaps it is these difficult times that will force us to do so and give us the opportunity to rewrite everything and create a fantastic, wonderful life. It is this kind of reassesses of the relationship between man and nature and man and technology that will bring us close to the radical change in our thinking, so that we can not only face the changes of our time, but can pursue them much better in the form of a new way of life. Thank you for your attention.